Welcome to the video viewers, and as you may have very well have deduced by now, this is the first challenge video on the Old Blue Jimny channel. A couple months ago, I removed Jimbo's rear seats in order to film another video, which you may or may not have seen yet. Anyway, one evening I sat pondering. A question was playing at the forefront of my mind. What can I do with Jimbo's old rear seats? A trip to the local tip certainly was not an option, until the amalgamation of ill-informed brain cells in my cranium made enough friction to cause a spark. I had a thought. A challenge video. Perfect, only there was one problem. Who, on this platform, would want to collaborate with a channel that had just gained its 5th subscriber? But, before my pessimistic skepticism made me return to the drawing board, I had reached out to one other creator. A creator who also owns a Jimny. His second, in fact, makes some quality content, and who has converted his little truck into a camper. And, to my surprise, GERfusion, the creator in question, accepted my proposition. The challenge was set, an end date circled on our respective calendars, and we both began building. The project. Phase 1. The frame. Now, with all that tedious blabbering out the way, let's get started. After a quick scribble in my Be a Happy Sausage notepad and a trip to B&Q, I had a plan that was only 35% flawed. The first thing I did was get my wood out and start drawing on it.
What do you mean by that?
Initially, I wasn't going to bother with any particular joinery. Butt joints were going to be my go-to for this project.
Yeah, boy.
Until I decided a little rebate here and there wouldn't hurt. Over at the crosscut, I set up a spacer block and then set my desired depth to cut a groove on each end of the 2 cross rails. Made my first cut and realized I would need another spacer. With all depth stops and blocks set with fingers well out the way, I was ready to start butchering some timber. Back on the workbench, I began marking the 6 rebates for the vertical bars. And, somewhere between the saw and the bench, I realized I had made my first mistake, though it was quickly remedied. With a new depth set on the crosscut, I began cutting some simple joints. Having cut all 6 rebates, I then took to the floor for a quick test fit. Now, with everything sort of going to plan, I began marking the ends of the cross rails. This decision was an ode to Jimbo's Japanese heritage, even though he was assembled in Spain. I thought that Japanese-esque shaped ends would be rather fitting for this project. Next, some pilot holes were needed, and then a test fit. Hopefully by now you can see where this is going. Test fit complete, I disassembled everything, drilled more holes, countersunk them, and glue. Reassembled the frame, and checked for squareness. Then I began the awkward and at times dangerous business of attaching some ply. I think that in this segment of the video, actions speak louder than words. Of course, all of this would have been made a lot easier with a table saw, or a circular saw, or even a smidgen of sensible foresight.
I'm gonna need every last drop of this. That's good shit right there.
With all of that monkey business out of the way, I cut a chamfer along the top edge of the plyboard.
Well, he was born next to a nuclear power plant, has an IQ of 2, and got hit in the head with several rocks as a child. He goes to the bench and he has no idea what the fuck is going on.
Glue. And fixed it in place. Phase 2. The seats. Now, onto the part of the project that had no margin for error. The seats. Any mistakes made here could potentially scupper the whole challenge. My 2 remaining brain cells started to work overtime as I devised a safe and logical method of securely fastening Jim's old seats to their new frame. So furiously were my faithful brain cells working, I could have sworn I felt the stirrings of a third. So, in the end, I just decided to drive wood screws into them. It would be advised that one should practice sensible sitting down on these seats. Having securely set half of the furniture in place, I called it a day. Day 2 of the build. Sporting a slightly different polo shirt, I began prepping the backrests. And now, before you, the 35% of this project that I hadn't a clue as to how I would approach it. I figured I would start by reattaching the brackets that typically fasten the backrests to the rear wheel arches, and allow the seats to pivot. Then, a couple scrap pieces of ply were needed, for a hodgepodge means of temporary support. In the usual flimsy fashion, I screwed the first piece in place, and, with some trial and error, attached the second piece. To my dismay, I soon realized the bracket that fastens to the base of Jim's bodywork wasn't perfectly flat. So, in a counting pennies fashion, I stacked up some washers to act as spacers. For now, this would be a temporary solution that would become permanent. Then I made some markings, found the centers of the bracket bolt holes, and began drilling. At last, I was able to insert the first pair of bolts. Then I needed to make a couple of sturdy side mounts for the backrests. Off camera, I began aimlessly stumbling through the process of happy-go-lucky creativity until I had a mount that was practical and easy on the eye. All this so I could trace the second mount and pretend as if I had meticulously and purposefully crafted a bespoke wooden joint with ease. Lifting with my knees, I set the backrests on the workbench and began getting mount number 1 into its optimal position. Screwed it in place and secured the bolt with a nut and washer. Then I repeated the whole process over on the flip side. Underneath, I cut down a bolt and fastened them in place with washers and nuts. Then I needed a solution to keep the seats fixed in place when sitting on Jim's roof rails. So, with some leftover oak from a previous project, I cut and sanded some dominoes to safely secure the frame in place. Phase 3. The legs. Day 3 would see me donning another new and exciting polo shirt. Initially, I wasn't going to add legs to this project, but I figured a little extra versatility wouldn't hurt. And not to mention that not everybody is an avid parkourer. Anyway, the legs. The idea of the shape and material of the legs came to me on one rather nondescript day while sitting in a Costa coffee shop in the middle of Bicester. As I sat there, my companion, similar to the day itself, was chanting away about all the minor inconveniences she had encountered that week. Naturally, my mind began to wander when she was wrapping up Tuesday's turmoil. Shortly thereafter, my eyes began to wander too. And there, bolted to various items of furniture, were plywood legs, similar to the stencil I'm haphazardly making before your eyes. Upon this epiphany, among the clangs and bangs of baristas hard at work, I let out a crooked smile. Luckily, that absent-minded smile arrived just as Friday's forlorn fate was being told. But never mind all that. I had an idea of how I would be wrapping up this project. Having successfully fabricated a template I was happy with, I then got to the business of cutting out rough leg shapes on some 1-inch thick ply. After that, I put a straight flush cutting bit in my palm router and began neatening up the legs. With the last set of legs routed, I removed the template, filled some screws with glue and sawdust, and sanded everything smooth.
So good and tasty.
Then, after some sexy B-roll, I put a chamfer bit in my trusty old Makita knockoff router and softened up the edges.
perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
A sprinkling of some more sexy B-roll later, and some heavy lifting, I was ready to start fixing some legs in place. And, well, I would bore you with a dreary droning description of what I did, but I'm sure you know the drill by now. With the legs bolted in place, I then went inside to change my shirt, due to the sneaking suspicion that it might be too tight and therefore ever so slightly pornographic, resulting in demonetization. Finally, with the slimming illusion that comes with wearing stripes, I braced the legs in a sort of let's see what happens kind of way, and carried out some minor moronic machine operation, before my camera ran out of battery. Phase 4. The competition. Day 4, and it's time to travel south to Newbury in search of the infamous Ball Hill. But first, I would need to pack up my disassembled half of the challenge. With everything packed up, I climbed into Jimbo and began the arduous journey to the film location.
Let me tell you something! Wait!
Montgomery.
And
Did you really bought it?
Of course it is.
Would you like some cheese on top, sir?
Why, yes. Give me a heart attack a while.
This piece of shit.
It was a blustery day atop Ball Hill, and rain loomed off in the distance. Despite the atmospherical threats, GERfusion promptly got to business disturbing the peace and tranquility of the tip of Ball Hill.
Then you go to hill and go down.
Why you get fried,
yes,
man?
why? Are you crazy?
You're fucking paranoid,
You are
man.
fucking, you are fucking.
You fucking, you bloody,
You bloody-
fuck you bloody, bastard bitch,
You
fuck you,
bastard,
fuck
you.
you.
Having been sufficiently berated, and having wiped up all resulting tears, Gary's submission was assembled.
He was raised in the swamp, in back of a slough. He grew up eating rattlesnake meat, drinking homemade brew. The folks hereabout call him Gator, and everybody knows him well. Meanest man ever hit the swamp. Folks swear he come straight out of hell.
Right, hello sports fans. So, I suppose I better talk you through my creation. Well, compared to Eric's, this is a little bit sort of slapdash. So, when he said to me, we should do a challenge, you got to make something out of your rear seats, I really couldn't think of anything else. So, I was walking around a garden centre with her indoors, and I saw one of these swinging chairs, and I thought, that'll do. So basically, I come up with this creation. Most people would probably use rope or, you know, some nice chains or something looking, but I didn't have any of that. So this is a firefighter's hose that I had laying around. So I've used that as a sort of a nice little strop. And they're just self-tapped straight into 2x2. 99.9% of this is made with 2x2, apart from these two bits of wood that I found in my greenhouse, which I just sort of slapped on there, and they're all split and everything. I'm not even sure that it can take my weight, but I have sat on it, and her indoors has sat on it as well, and it did work. So here we go, moment of truth. If it breaks, as long as it doesn't hit your car, I don't care. Oh, there you go, look, Feet off the ground, that counts. That counts. There we go.
Oh my god! Oh jeez, oh my god!
Job's a good one. The arms that I put on here, they're actually not optional. I had to put arms in there because it wasn't strong enough to support its own weight. So if I just put these on without them, it would have just basically folded up. So I put these arms on for a bit of strength and to sort of look all right. And the joinery that I used was, I just literally like laid it down and went, that looks about right, cut it and joined them together. So no professional joins there. Timber locks on the top, everything else are just normal self-tappers. The back of it does sort of, I think, resemble like a baboon's bum, you know, when they've got their sort of the roidy look to them. But yeah, other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. This will be the last day of its life because I'm taking it apart from now on. Oh, that's it. Right, now.
Thank you, viewers, for watching what has turned out to be a very long video. I would just like to remind you to check out GERfusion's build video over on his channel. There you'll find a funny insight into the creation of his hillbilly-esque contribution to the challenge, and a different perspective to the reveal segment of his video. Well, viewers, this is it. Please consider liking and subscribing for future content. And join me next time when I'll be doing something Jimny related.